Welcome to Episode 5 in the Anonymous Grief Anatomy series called The Science of Sadness and the Art of Blending Family Chaos. Hey there, folks! Welcome back to Grief Anatomy, the show where we tackle life's big questions, sometimes with wisdom, sometimes with caffeine, and occasionally with a tad bit of humor on a serious and debilitating subject matter. Today, we're diving into a topic that's as unavoidable as family drama at Thanksgiving, grief in families. Now, I know what you're thinking. Great, another podcast and episode about sadness and needless dwelling, just what I needed today. But hear me out. Grief is incredibly weird, highly selfish, unpredictable, and a little unhinged, like that crazy relative who brings their own popcorn and snacks into the movie theater. It's gloriously messy. It makes us cry unexpectedly and laugh at inappropriate times for absolutely no rhyme or reason. And when you add family into the mix, oh boy, well, buckle up. It's about to get bumpy. Some families grieve with heartfelt speeches, others without acknowledgement, and some just bottle it all up until someone explodes at a gathering 5 years later. Sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so. Today we're talking about how different family structures, whether nuclear, blended, extended, or just a random collection of people who tolerate each other, affect the way we handle loss and grief-stricken individuals within the unit. In this episode, we will hear grief stories, break down why we all process things so differently, and hopefully, by the end, we'll figure out how to support each other without making it super weird. Please remember that if you need to pause, take a break, ship, or rest in any capacity, do so without permission from anyone else but yourself. Sometimes this direct questioning and responses elicit unfavorable outcomes and trigger feelings of the past, healed or not. There is no obligation to continue past a point that you are comfortable with. In part of the segment, I would like to introduce myself, Andy, your local registered social worker, and I brought a fellow colleague and peer who will remain anonymous. Each episode has a partnership with an interprofessional team to help disseminate the collective and massive amounts of information surrounding grief in families. My peer is joining us today as a friend in the social work field. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so I thought we could try something new, an icebreaker in today's episode where you are the guinea pig. It is nothing too hard, but the icebreaker question for you is, if grief had a theme song, what do you think yours would be? Honestly, bonus points for singing it too.
Oh boy. Okay, not that long ago, I would have said that my grief song was Elton John's I'm Still Standing. I'm going to save you by not singing it, but I will quote it. I hope I still get the bonus points. Here it goes. Don't you know I'm still standing better than I ever did, looking like a true survivor, feeling like a little kid, and I'm still standing after all this time, picking up the pieces of my life without you on my mind. This is because I come from a lot of family chaos and confusion. I think I will keep it as my theme song for now. It always seems to fit in with all the family structure ups and downs.
Yeah, okay, that is a good one. I'll have to start using that one in my personal directives. I once had Savage Daughter by Ekaterina Shelihova as my theme song, and I'm not going to lie, it still surfaces when I need to apply strength behind my convictions or stand in my space respectfully. It is a powerful song with a lot of bite, so I think I won't do away with it just yet, but I will adopt the essence of Elton John's I'm Still Standing. Thank you for that.
You are more than welcome. It is a great song for so many reasons. It was a good icebreaker question.
Thank you for your participation. Okay, so listeners, grab your emotional support snack and let's get into the introduction. In this episode, we dissect the human experience with the precision of a scientist, the curiosity of a philosopher, the social skills of someone who overthinks every text they've ever sent, and navigating the temperature and tone of communication while being wildly dysregulated and unfamiliar with orbiting grief, nuances for yourself and others around you. I'm Andy, your host, your guide, and today, your emotional co-pilot through the wild terrain of grief and family dynamics.
Now, before you go ahead and activate system avoidance protocols, withdraw or run for the exit, hear us out. Yes, I know that grief is a very heavy topic and typically avoided, and not spoken about, but let's be honest, so is assembling IKEA furniture, and yet we still subject ourselves to that total and utter chaos. Family grief is unavoidable and deeply personal. So we thought today we're unpacking the anatomy of grief, not just the science of loss, but the beautifully bizarre ways families handle it and how they got there. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that grief doesn't just exist in the heart. It shows up in the group text chats, in the unspoken, sometimes unfair, family rules, and in that one family member who insists on making wildly untimely and unfortunate comments or dismisses the feelings of others just to keep the family status quo.
Sometimes family structures shape how we mourn, heal, and sometimes how we completely avoid dealing with our emotions altogether and who we confide in. Whether you grew up in a tight-knit clan where everyone grieves together over homemade lasagna, or in a family where talking about feelings is considered a dangerous sport, your experience of loss has been influenced by the people around you.
We are deep diving into an anonymous story from someone's real-life experience and personal situation, exploring their heartbreak with painfully relatable moments. You might feel personally attached or attacked, depending on the family dynamics you've experienced in your upbringing. We'll explore the unspoken roles of family grief, why some families fall apart while others somehow get closer, based on their roles and responsibilities within the family system. Either way, we are saying the quiet stuff out loud, so hopefully it becomes less debilitating and more liberating.
If you need to grab a cup of tea, a box of tissues, or perhaps something stronger, if that's your vibe, no judgment. Nothing about grief is off limits. It can be extremely strange and problematic, where family dynamics get even more complex, but ultimately, we're shedding light on these topics. We feel in this podcast that talking about it is half the battle and tends to soothe the parts of unrest in all of us, with naming and acknowledging it. Welcome to Grief Anatomy, dear guest, and thank you for having an open and honest conversation about grief, family dynamics, and pathways towards healing. Today, our anonymous guest has generously agreed to share their story about grief in their family dynamics. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm a little nervous being here today.
I can completely understand that. If you weren't nervous, I might be concerned. Haha. I think it is fair to say that family roles and responsibilities shape us in some very profound ways. All the roles seem to have certain privileges and equally a devastating cost.
That's such an interesting angle to explore because we rarely hear from those who benefited from family favoritism.
That's true. Mostly we hear about the detriments that these family roles have caused, especially in later years because we still bring this childhood role into the adult ages. I would like to understand your journey a little bit more. So let's start with what brought you here today.
Recently, I have been having a hard time with grief within my family unit. I do strongly think that grief is something that shapes us, often in ways I didn't always expect, and especially at a young age. I have noticed that the family structure recently changed, and when that happens, how I feel about myself changes as well. I really only noticed this within the last couple of years when I wanted to be viewed differently in the family, but was unable to change my status. Honestly, I've been navigating the loss of myself and how I showed up within the family, like I feel as though I can't make a mistake, and that the old version of me and the expectation of who I was told to be stays with me, and either I do not need to address it and apologize, or I'm held to a higher standard that I can't mess up and do what I want to do authentically. It is very complicated and challenging in the family, but also internally how I process it all. My role, the one I assumed, used to be understood by all in my family. We all had a place and knew how to function within it, and frankly, I benefited a great deal, so I didn't challenge it so much.
That sounds like difficult terrain to openly explore within your family and for yourself. What position do you feel you held within your family unit as a child?
My role? Good question. Probably the golden child. I say probably, but I know I was the golden child. Honestly, I could do no wrong, but it became suffocating after a while. I didn't know I was in this position initially because I never got in trouble like my siblings did. I truly thought I was invincible. Even when I knew that I had messed up, it was brushed aside, and the blame was placed elsewhere. After some time, I started to notice that my other siblings carried different roles that were not so complimentary and were often held responsible for my mistakes, and I honestly have no idea how I even got this role. Perhaps it is because I am the firstborn?
Yeah, hard to say. These roles are assigned for various reasons to keep the family functioning, even in dysfunction. Knowing what you know now, seeing things from the perspective of the golden child, what do you feel has been the hardest part of carrying this grief within your family unit?
Well, probably the unbearable silence. No one talked about any of it. I had conversations in my head that reassured me that this role of golden child was earned, that my siblings had also earned their titles too. Because of the silence, I convinced myself that these roles were properly placed, and it was reinforced when no one talked about it. We just silently kept up the roles whether we agreed to them or not. I thought this was how we were meant to function. It seemed like my siblings were always mad at me, but I believed that was because I was doing everything right, and they were just mad because they could not live up to my potential. I genuinely thought it was a them issue. The unfathomable burden on me grew over time, from not talking about the mistakes I have made or continue to make. It is like I was never to blame, impervious to any wrongdoing. It must be them, not me. There were many things left unsaid, and resentment steadily grew. I look back now at the way I blindly skirted taking responsibility for any of my actions because of this role placed on me. I was secretly happy to accept this easy position without a care for others in my family. I had what I thought I needed. At times, I still feel like I do not need to explain myself, and that I am not wrong in many scenarios, which brings about more conflict than I would like. I have little to no self-awareness, and I am working on it. I have a fractured relationship with my siblings. They get along, but they do not like me very much because of our experiences of our upbringing, and I can now see why. I have a hard time adjusting to not being the center of attention and striving for perfection in all areas.
That makes perfect sense. It does sound like you do have some self-awareness when you disclosed how it has affected you and your siblings. The fascinating thing is how you described your role as both a privilege and a prison. How you literally couldn't make mistakes. Everything was brushed aside, blamed on others, creating this suffocating expectation of perfection. That must have created such a warped sense of reality growing up. How do you develop genuine self-awareness when nobody holds you accountable?
Well, I'm not sure that I developed a strong sense of self-awareness, especially in my youth. I struggle with accountability, as that was never taught to me. I am learning it now, though. Hard lessons, and sometimes it can be deeply debilitating.
Wow, that really struck me. The weight of unacknowledged mistakes and unspoken personal and familial truths that created this massive divide between accountability, self-awareness, and projection. You can see how it became toxic over time for you?
Oh yes, I see it now. I think I saw it back then too, but didn't want to think or talk about it because I was benefiting from it.
Do you feel as though your siblings developed resentment while you, as the golden child, remained isolated in your bubble of perceived perfection?
Yes, 100%. I see it now.
This is what makes this story so compelling. You're now actively trying to break free from that role, even though you admitted to enjoying the benefits back then. That's an incredibly vulnerable admission with self-awareness, no?
Yes, that's true.
How has your understanding of this grief and loss changed over time?
At first, it felt like something I had to just get used to or get through in my upbringing. Then I would forge a new way through. No problem. Then there was a moment where I was like, this is not something I can redo or reshape. This had embedded pieces of me in it. Maybe a sense of entitlement, especially when it came to my siblings. It feels too late to repair, and I really want to repair. I admit that I benefited from this role growing up. I felt sheltered and immune to persecution, but I did not take into consideration the harm it would do later in my life. I know I was revered. I know I stood in a power position, but I liked how it made me feel, and now it feels like I can't go back and correct anything because I like how it made and still makes me feel. But I want to make amends with my siblings as we are all aging and are creating families of our own. I want them to understand that I suffered too at times, not like they did, but in other ways. It felt like this role, which I did not choose, really reshaped me and the family. My parents feel they did not do wrong, which causes conflict within our family.
Thank you for sharing that with me. Family dynamics can be hard to renegotiate and establish. It sounds like you are trying to change the way you were viewed in the family to something different now, but others are unsure of how to discuss this new change or how to bring about new change within the unit. Were there any rituals or practices that helped you process your grief and loss?
Not really traditional rituals, but I started by writing some letters of acknowledgement to my siblings, which I have sent to them, mostly because they don't want to hear about my position of grief and loss in the role of the golden child. I don't blame them. My parents also feel they did no wrong or harm in labeling us, I think, but my parents do not want to talk about it openly, nor do they care if things change. They are happy to keep things in the past. They make comments like, "It was so long ago, we did the best we could. Can't we just let this all go now? Forgive and forget." This is so challenging and frustrating for us as a family. This causes more family conflict, and also, my siblings shut down immediately with the unfairness of it all. Honestly, I think the next steps are figuring out how to address repairing when someone isn't sorry, like my parents, and how to show my siblings that I want to have a new and better relationship with them moving forward. Small steps in time, I know, but my God, do I feel overwhelmed, uncertain, and insecure every step of the way. I don't want to make things worse. It is like my golden child created an easy path for me while growing up, but is now my most difficult task as a mature adult. That really shows the depth of the damage, I think, doesn't it? When I can't even have direct conversations about these family issues, and my parents' response just compounds everything.
Yes, the classic. We did our best. Let's just move on, avoidance response. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire of unresolved trauma. There's something so invalidating about it. It's not even about blame. It's about acknowledging that this harm happened.
Exactly. And what's particularly challenging is that when I am trying to repair relationships while still battling these ingrained patterns, my immediate instinct is still to deflect blame or avoid responsibility because I never had to grow up. I have to relearn or just learn it in my case.
That internal struggle must be completely exhausting, fighting against behaviors that were rewarded for decades. I mean, being the golden child in a family isn't all sunshine and compliments, but from the outside, with the lens of your siblings, it probably feels that way, do you think?
Totally. It's like they were praised for compliance, emotional suppression, and delivery of role performance. And now I'm undoing all that. Rewiring myself in real time is hard, like really hard, but I'm dedicated.
Speaking of struggles, you described this fascinating paradox, grieving the loss of your privileged position while also trying to dismantle it. It's like you are both the demolition crew and the building being torn down.
Yes, see the complexities and challenges I'm dealing with now.
Yes, I do. This sounds like a lot, but as you said, you have the dedication to see this through, whatever direction that takes you. It does explain why this process is so painful to you and your family. You're essentially dismantling parts of your identity, parts that made you feel safe, or at least illuminating the parts of you that felt seen growing up. How hard do you find it that in those small moments, choosing a different response to conflict resolution?
I have to say that it is taxing and somewhat rewarding when space is given, I noticed. But when space is not always given, then it feels deflating, and I have to ask myself why I am even doing this. So dedication is always what drives me regardless of the outcome. I am learning to navigate these emotional landmines, but it is really challenging.
It really is, especially for someone who was conditioned to keep it together and present as perfect at all times. That ability to sit in discomfort is revolutionary when you were raised in a family that prized perfection over authenticity. I applaud you for all the efforts you are making. It is not easy, but here you are, working at it. Following that statement, what emotions in this process do you think have surprised you the most?
Well, top of the list, resentment. I really wasn't expecting that because I was the one who was being treated better than most. I think it was resentment in the form of I didn't choose this role, therefore I should not be treated unfairly by my siblings for it. I see the flaw in this way of thinking, but it keeps going through my head as I am the victim. And also, in turn, there are heaping amounts of guilt, like, I don't know where to start and I hate being so vulnerable. I definitely find myself reverting back to blaming my parents, which gets me nowhere and only justifies me as the golden child over and over again. It is a path of thinking I wish would disappear, keeps me stuck, and my siblings feel like I was put on a pedestal, which looking back now, I know I was. They feel I got off easy, and I did. If I am going to be honest, I really didn't look into any of this stuff until I saw a big hole, and I was all alone. I almost feel like it is too late, but I really do not want to give up either.
Have you had many moments where you felt like giving up during this process?
Oh my goodness, yes. So many moments where it was all too much, so overwhelming, with no manual. Sometimes it would be received well, and I thought there was movement. Then, other times, more often than not, massive, colossal moments of failing. And in those moments, I think, what's the point? It will remain like this because I feel I deserve it. It is entirely exhausting to find another push for reconnection in those moments. There were many times when I felt like I was drowning in it. I am still grappling with this mindset where it feels insurmountable.
I can see how difficult it could be trying over and over again without knowing the outcome or impact it will make for the conclusion of the repair. If you could go back and give your past self advice at the start of this journey, what do you think it would be?
I definitely start this sooner rather than later. I would be very kind to myself, less selfish, by being more aware of how my role impacted those around me. I would have been more transparent and forgiving. I absolutely would have had a conversation with my parents and siblings to course correct. I feel like hindsight is 2020. I know that failure is progress, just doesn't feel like it. Feels physically harmful and debilitating. I also know that there will be days when it feels like I have made absolutely no progress, and that will have to be okay. I need to be soft and tell myself that it is still progress and movement forward.
That's quite an understandable shift from someone who was conditioned to maintain a certain image at all times. And also, let's talk about the generational aspect of this, how these family systems carry over from grandparents to parents and so on. It's like trying to break a chain that's been forged over generations without a manual, directions, or an opt-out option.
The generational curses really do take a toll on families. That does put a lot on one person when assigning roles, especially when I didn't ask for it at all. Changing my behavior and attitude has been very challenging indeed. I'm trying to interrupt patterns that have been reinforced for decades.
I liked your reference to not being responsible for the roles that were assigned to you and your siblings, regardless of the generational roles passed down, but you are very much responsible for healing from what happened during those years. It removes shame while still emphasizing personal agency in the healing process. And now your family is potentially creating families of your own, which adds this whole new layer of urgency to the healing work, as you probably want to be the cycle breaker. I can see why doing the work now really is an act of compassion to the future families by trying to prevent these patterns from affecting the next generation.
Yes, that thought has definitely entered my mind as I have aged. It is like I am on a time crunch and racing against the clock to break these cycles before they become embedded within my own family structure.
I find that resilient and remarkable. The level of self-awareness you've developed. You most assuredly went from someone who admitted to having little to no self-awareness to being able to articulate these complex dynamics and your own role in perpetuating them. That kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It takes tremendous courage to look at yourself honestly, which you are doing. Brave space. When we don't honor or hold brave space for ourselves and we accept being so hard on ourselves, it can hinder forward progress. So I am happy to hear you are affording yourself some safe moments and time to process without judgment. I know we discussed some self-support and feelings of isolation. Have you felt misunderstood or alone in your family grief?
Absolutely. I know that my parents meant well, but I have issues nonetheless, as a direct result of something they did and placed on me. I had no idea that being treated this way would result in such hurt feelings for myself and my siblings. I know I benefited from my parents favoring me, but I also feel misunderstood and confused about how it came about, and I now feel isolated from my family, more specifically, my siblings. No one but I seem to really want to repair this. I wonder if it is because of my grief within my family that has me feeling even more stuck and frustrated, mostly hurt.
Having personally been on the receiving end of trying to make things work out in a particular way, but then it doesn't turn out, can make you want to give up or see how it could be an impossible task to complete. It can be equally challenging when there is more than one participant with their own feeling and emotions in play. With that in mind, what do you wish others knew about supporting someone in the grief process?
I'd say hold space. Always hold space because you don't know what they are experiencing and what will be shared. I'd also say it is important to hold personal judgments, creating a barrier and bias-free environment, and just be there with them as they are rocked with these emotions, circumstances, etc. Be mindful not to solve, and try not to insert opinions. Definitely don't try to fix it for them. Be patient and don't try to rush it. Let people feel what they need to feel.
That is great advice. Being a supportive person to someone else may allow you to empathize and understand how you need to be supported and by whom. Giving that a moment of thought with your lived experiences, who do you feel is your support network?
I am still trying to figure that out. If I were to have some deep reflection, I would have to acknowledge that as uncomfortable as this process of trying to repair and rebuild in my relationship with my family, I can say there are small movements forward. Like my sister called me the other day to mildly ask for a favor from me. Instantly, I was feeling like saying no, but I fought the urge and traveled towards positive encouragement. I realized she could have asked someone else or simply done it herself, but she called to connect with me. Typically, my siblings would not call me so little things, so my support network can grow. I also have a really accepting partner. We took so much time to get there, but it is turning a corner, and I am so grateful because I feel more supported than I ever have.
That sounds encouraging. I am happy for you. I think you can see the fruits of your labor. What's something you think you've learned about yourself through all of this in the many stages of your life?
I think talking about it has been key. I also see the benefit of self-awareness and reflection. Had I not ventured down this path, I doubt I would be to the point I am at today. Is it where I'd like to be? No, but I can now see the stages when I knew I had to contemplate a change. It reminds me of the change cycle and where I was in each section. I value that I met myself where I was at. I can also acknowledge that I'm stronger than I thought I was, and the same goes for my siblings, being more forgiving and patient with the process. Without that, I would not have gotten far, and I believe that healing is necessary for me moving forward.
Okay, wow, that's a great epiphany. Have you had any unexpected moments of peace or joy throughout the stages?
I want to say yes, but it is not yet remarkable for me. I have felt peace in my partnership, which is new for me. For us as a couple, I realized I can approach things more calmly when I experience pockets of peace. It is like, I know there is an ability to get through it. without getting so overwhelmed and fearful of the future outcomes. There is peace in knowing that the way I operated before does not need to be the go-to approach.
Thank you for your response. What do you think gives you hope on hard days, or what has worked for you in the past moments of overwhelming grief?
Well, I guess having the idea that love doesn't disappear just because I'm feeling unbalanced or weak. My upbringing was filled with attempts at perfection funneled from my parents. I told myself that I could not fail under any circumstances, and that my self worth was attached to my core fundamental being. I didn't try to change anything in my past, but rather ruin my self worth with being perfect, the golden child within the family. I will say now there have been a few changes in place to help me move away from this way of thinking, but if I am being honest, it's still there. I just need to remember not to feed it.
When navigating steps forward, how do you think you will handle coping with triggers that bring back painful recollections?
Yeah, I think this will always be an ongoing challenge for me. I am still learning to surf the waves that come and go. I do try to name them as they surface. It does help. I do have a history of avoiding difficult emotions so I can be at peace with myself, but I got tired of trying to push them down, and it didn't really work for me anyway.
And let's not forget the practical wisdom you have shared about supporting someone through grief, about holding brave and accountable space without trying to fix things or rush the process. That comes from hard-won experience. It's like you've learned that sometimes the most helpful thing isn't solutions, but simply presence and acceptance. Additionally, looking at the bigger picture, this story really challenges our assumptions about privilege within families, doesn't it? Being the favorite child might look appealing from the outside, but it comes with its own form of trauma.
Yep, 100%. A really good illustration of what I experienced in my family. I believe that it is so important that we recognize that family, doesn't matter the role, often gets pulled back into triangulations, conflict, old behaviors, and patterns that do not serve the greater interest in healing and connection of the family, regardless of how it came about. These family roles and dynamics are never as simple as they appear from the outside. If you see it, I feel it is your obligation to work at it in the safest and best way possible.
Well, I do think this conversation gives us all something to think about in terms of our own family roles and the patterns that we all might be unconsciously perpetuating. And as you said, it reminds us that it's never too late to start the work of healing, even if the process is messy and uncomfortable.
That's true for me. Trading perfection for authenticity isn't easy, but as my story shows, it's worth the effort, I think.
Makes perfect sense. Looking back, specifically with a resiliency and growth lens, what do you think you are most proud of?
I am most proud of the fact that I didn't shut down or give up. I wanted to. At every moment, I kept reasons alive to quit and give up. I am proud that I let myself go through it instead of avoiding it by going around it in every other direction. Also, that grief isn't something to fix. It is, however, something to integrate into your life to help change the perspective.
That is incredibly insightful. What do you think you would offer to others if they were faced with being in a family role that was pre-assigned to them that they wish to break out of? Like if someone listening right now is assigned a different role than you but really wants to change their circumstances and relationships, what do you think you would say to them?
These roles were assigned to you as you aged through your family life. And generational family systems carry over from grandparents, parents, etc. This is not something you are responsible for. You are, however, responsible for healing from what happened, even if it was not your fault. You're not broken, not even a little bit. You don't have to rush healing either, and you don't have to do this alone.
Thank you for sharing your story with us today. I value your courage to talk so openly about what you've experienced within your family unit. I myself had a lot of roles assigned to me during my upbringing that did not serve me in any capacity, but it did help me learn coping skills and experience healing my authentic self.
Thank you for giving space to these conversations. They are really important, and until I found myself in this seat and contributing, I felt I had not expressed value to my journey. therefore not able to heal the wounds of my past. I appreciate what you are doing here too.
Thank you for saying that. And also to our listeners, wherever you are in your own journey, know that you're not alone. Take good care of yourself, guest sharer. Wow, what a great podcast interview conversation today about family dynamics and grief. We are going to continue to say the quiet parts of family dynamics out loud. Joining me again to talk about family dynamics, the roles and responsibilities on the broader scope, is my brilliant, slightly and equally chaotic collaborator colleague.
Slightly chaotic, maybe more. Either way, I will take it as a compliment. So, hey everyone, happy to be here and ready to talk about family dysfunction, like what I experienced, as expressed in our interview, because honestly, what family doesn't deal in dysfunction and assigned roles these days?
You may ask yourself, what are family roles? So I think we will do a quick breakdown of some of the different roles, inspired by psychological studies and real-life experiences. You've probably heard of the golden child and the scapegoat, but there are so many more, and plot twist, they aren't just random labels. They happen for a reason. They actually come from family systems theory, which basically says that families function like ecosystems. When things get messy, people fall into predictable roles to keep the system running, even if it's totally dysfunctional, because that is all they know about how it functions, so they continue to function in the ways that were modeled or assigned to them.
Yes, these roles usually form when there's, let's say, an emotionally unavailable parent, aka the kind of person who thinks I love you is best expressed through passive-aggressive micro or macro expressions.
We are going to break the common ones down. 1. The golden child, the perfect one who can do no wrong, praised for achievements, sometimes used as the family's public relations department. 2. The scapegoat, the rebel, the one blamed for everything even when they were literally not in the room. 3. The lost child, the quiet one, usually overlooked, master of disappearing into the background. The hero, the responsible one who basically functions as a third parent, will probably develop a deep love for therapy later in life. 5. The mascot, the family clown, uses humor to distract from emotional turmoil, may or may not have a stand-up career in the works.
Honestly, a quick shout out to the mascots, because without them, some family gatherings would be completely unbearable and less entertaining.
Right? When these roles aren't chosen but assigned, then recognizing and managing can be quite difficult, as you can see within our interview. The golden child isn't necessarily the best, and the scapegoat isn't actually the problem. It's just how the family dynamic sorts itself out, like a weird, unsanctioned reality TV show. Okay, so let's talk stats. Did you know that in families with a clear golden child, like you expressed earlier, siblings are 3 times more likely to experience anxiety and depression? Further to that, studies show that scapegoats often develop stronger leadership and independence skills because they're so used to standing their ground. Basically, every scapegoat should put emotional endurance expert on their resume.
Right? Next to professional black sheep and family drama strategist in the family.
Yes, some of us assume a role in order to successfully function as a unit. Some are assigned as the golden child, some are the scapegoat, and some are just here for the drama and emotional damage, unbeknownst to them. But let's look closer at what these roles actually mean in the family. But most importantly, covering how to stay sane in these moments without feeling the need to flee to another country for safety is our main goal today.
I love that you just jumped into that with both feet, no hesitation. Like, it isn't super complex and incapacitating. However, it is a really good question worth discussing in greater detail for sure. Also, I think that it is worth a petition to retire passive phrases like, you know how they are, as an excuse for family drama.
Yes, that totally minimizes and re-traumatizes the family member that finally finds their voice, and it easily dismisses the toxic behavior of the aggressor. Stick around while we discuss bits and pieces of the interview and the complexities and intricacies of family dynamics. We're breaking it all down with facts, humor, and hopefully only mild existential crises.
So, jumping in with family roles and dynamics. Roles and dynamics truly shape everything from our relationships to our careers. But what's very fascinating is that 80% of children can accurately identify the family favorite, while the other 20% are living in complete denial. Interesting, no? Especially after the conversation we just had about you being the golden child. I guess you may have experienced being part of the 20% growing up, yeah?
Well, yes, that's a surprisingly high percentage and pretty accurate, though, from what I've seen. Though I suppose it's hard to miss when one sibling gets a car for graduation with all the bells and whistles while another gets a firm pat on the back. It is easy to see those glaring differences, the subtle ones are harder to navigate. Passive-aggressive comments are really confusing as well, as our interview showed us.
Yeah, I suppose so. Depends on the role the person has assumed or been assigned to. These roles aren't just random assignments. They're actually rooted in family systems theory, which shows how families function like complex ecosystems. So I think I'm saying we're basically all just playing our parts in some unscripted family drama. Sounds fun.
Yes, exactly. Research shows these roles typically emerge when there's dysfunction in the system, often starting with something as simple as emotional unavailability from a parent or blended families, non-biological, spanning to adoption even, where the person has no say in their placement, like foster care.
Okay, so let's break down these roles systematically. First, we have the golden child, essentially the family's PR department who can do no wrong. This was discussed in the podcast interview. Well, that explains a lot about our interview person within their family unit. They could have literally set the house on fire and somehow gotten praised for it. Yes, I'm simplifying it, but that is how the golden child is viewed.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Studies show that in families with a clear golden child, like we were talking about in the podcast interview, shows that the other siblings are 3 times more likely to experience anxiety and depression, which rings true in this podcast segment.
Then we have the scapegoat, basically the designated family problem child. But here's the twist. Research shows they often develop incredible leadership skills and independence later in life. So kind of like an emotional Navy SEALs, trained under pressure to handle literally anything life throws at them.
Yes, exactly. Well said. The lost child is fascinating too. They're so good at emotional camouflage that studies show they often struggle with intimate relationships well into adulthood, which makes sense. When you learn that invisibility equals safety, it's probably hard to suddenly start being seen when invisibility gives a certain amount of ambiguity that you are used to.
And let's talk about the hero, the third parent who's probably been managing family calendars since elementary school. Research shows they typically experience major burnout by their late 20s. Sometimes the roles are intertwined and amalgamated too.
Then there's the mascot, the family jokester and comedian. What's fascinating is that studies show they actually have the highest levels of anxiety among all the family roles. It's like in the mascot's world, let's keep everyone laughing when you're screaming inside must take an eventual toll.
No doubt. These are all assigned roles, consciously or unconsciously, and mainly used as a survival platform. The hopeful part? Recent research in family psychology shows these roles aren't permanent. People who successfully break free report significantly higher life satisfaction.
Well, our guest is living proof of that. Breaking these patterns isn't exactly a walk in the park, so be prepared to navigate the ups and downs. Also, studies show that having professional support increases the success rate of role changes by about 60%. It's about understanding the entire system.
What's really interesting is how these patterns persist across cultures. Whether you're in Tokyo or Toronto, these fundamental roles appear consistently, which is great news and actually kind of comforting for our listeners, knowing we're all dealing with variations of the same family drama, just in different languages.
And here's something really crucial. These roles often persist across generations unless there's conscious intervention, which a change agent implements along the way. Children of golden children, for example, frequently end up in similar roles. So when you start the work and continue the cycle breaking, it has beautiful healing patterns attached to it.
So, in a roundabout way, what I hear you saying is that if we don't break these patterns now, we're basically setting up our kids for the same dynamics.
That is exactly right, according to studies and live experiences. But even small changes can have significant impacts. Setting one boundary or choosing not to play your usual role in one situation can start shifting the entire dynamic.
That's empowering, knowing we don't have to completely revolutionize everything at once, which can be overwhelming to say the least, and that the small changes being made will eventually pay off, like it is paying off future debts. So, how do we break these roles and set boundaries with unsettling family dynamics?
Honestly, I feel like we've emotionally dragged everyone through all their childhood trauma today. Oops, but I hope it got a few of them thinking about how their role in the family, how it shows up in their families, now or in the past. So, let's talk some possible solutions. Because the good news is, these roles aren't permanent. You can definitely break out of them.
It's not easy, but step one is to recognize the pattern. If you're always the fixer, maybe stop volunteering to smooth over family arguments. If you're the scapegoat, set some boundaries. Like, no, Aunt Linda, I did not ruin Christmas by bringing a +1.
Exactly. And therapy can also help a lot. A side note, family group chats are optional. No law requires you to respond to the family updates thread, especially if it's just passive-aggressive comments for engagement, which always end in more conflict than resolution.
And if you're not sure what your family role is, just wait until the next family holiday gathering. It'll reveal itself really quickly.
Seriously though, in the meantime, share this episode with a friend who needs it, and most importantly, remember, you're more than the role your family gave you, and in synchronized fashion, we are covering family system structures and dynamics. What are family dynamics?
Family dynamics refer to the patterns of interaction, communication, and behavior within a family system. These patterns often emerge from cultural background, generational trauma, family values, structure, nuclear, blended, single parent, etc., and individual personality traits.
Common roles assigned to children and families. In dysfunctional or stressed family systems, children often unconsciously adopt roles to maintain family stability or to cope with emotional chaos. These roles aren't formalized. They emerge subtly and can become internalized over time. They can also be assigned or assumed in duality as well. My colleague and I are going to cover again the basic labels assigned in family roles for clarity.
1. The hero, the golden child. Common characteristics, often the oldest, takes on responsibility early, overachiever, perfectionist, the one who makes the family look good, tries to compensate for family problems by excelling. However, the impact can lead to burnout, anxiety, people-pleasing, and difficulty expressing vulnerability.
2. The scapegoat, the black sheep. Review of common characteristics. The black sheep is the identified problem of the family. Often acts out, rebels, or gets into trouble. Tends to divert attention away from pre-existing deeper family dysfunction. The impact aids in internalizing blame, struggles with self-worth, confidence, and may adopt unhealthy coping mechanisms as a result.
3. The mascot, the class clown, uses humor to diffuse tension. Quite often, the youngest, provides the most amount of relief during conflict or trauma. The impact? It may mask their own pain, struggle with emotional depth, or feel pressure to always be the okay one.
4. The lost child, the invisible one. This child is often quite withdrawn, quiet, and overlooked. There is a tendency to retreat into books, video games, and fantasy worlds, prone to avoiding conflict and attention. The overall impact, they struggle with intimacy, assertiveness, and identity formation.
5. The caregiver child role, the parentified child within the family structure. These children with this designation tend to take on adult responsibilities, emotionally or physically. They adamantly support siblings or even the parent emotionally, often seen in families with addiction, illness, or single parenting. The impact may be growing up too fast, developing codependent tendencies, or struggling to ask for help.
6. The peacekeeper, the mediator role. They try to reduce conflict between parents or siblings. They become hypervigilant to family moods, vibes, and discourse. They are often praised for being mature or wise beyond their years, or old souls. The impact that they carry is difficulties setting boundaries, fears of conflict, and chronic anxiety.
I also believe it is prudent to cover again how these roles emerge within families, mostly through crisis or instability. Examples include addiction, death, mental illness, recovery, etc., within the family units, which can force children into survival roles, which are in direct opposition to thriving roles within the family's functioning or dysfunction. It also includes parental modeling, parents' own unresolved roles, trauma, generational trauma, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, etc. Additionally, the birth order and gender expectations play a significant role in role emergency. Last but not least, cultural and societal norms tend to have childhood family roles crop up. These are some of the reasons why a role may emerge.
There is theoretical backing for the aforementioned information, being that this research data includes backed sound logic on the structure and dynamics of family systems theory by Murray Bowen, which emphasizes that families are emotional units and that individuals cannot be understood in isolation. Second to that is tried and true attachment theory, which covers how early caregiver relationships affect the roles children adopt and their emotional regulation, dysregulation. The last theoretical block is psychodynamic theory, which suggests that unconscious processes, e.g., repression, projection, modeling, etc., shape roles and identity within the family.
There are long-term consequences to assuming or assigning family roles, which we are going to outline next, like obstinacy. Role rigidity can really stifle authentic identity formation. It may contribute to mental health issues like depression, anxiety, complex PTSD, addictions, etc. This tends to lead recipients to difficulty with adult relationships, codependency, fear of abandonment, not feeling worth or good enough, people-pleasing, etc. This is often perpetuated across generations unless consciously interrupted, and true healing can lead to recovery from embedded cyclical cycles.
Breaking the cycle means self-healing and reclaiming efforts to find personal identity. Ways in which to accomplish that are, first and foremost, evidence-based therapy, especially family or trauma-informed therapy with someone who understands the inner dynamics with deeper and meaningful ways to course correct, to soothe the inner child that took on this role. As discussed previously, psychoeducational is an essential form of healing and recovery treatment, so one can understand the roles and their impact on relationships. It is imperative that inner child work be looked into and considered, as this shifts inner childhood wounds so the person can heal their unmet needs. In previous episodes, we talked about the essential and vital role of boundary setting and communication skills, so that should be at the forefront. The last one, but not the final one, as there are a ton of treatments for the soul, is narrative reframing. Narrative reframing is rewriting a new story for yourself outside of the role you assumed. Kind of like choose your own adventure, where you can be the driver and discover and recover parts of yourself lost in the role you assumed, regardless of the reason.
We are also going to go over the context, examples in real life, such as a child who becomes the family translator in an immigrant household may grow into a people-pleasing adult who struggles with boundaries. A hero child might develop imposter syndrome because their value was tied to performance. Another example is that the scapegoat may become the most emotionally aware adult because they were forced to confront hard truths early in life. Does any of this resonate with you? What roles do you feel you may have embodied growing up? Please share in the comments.
In the usual spirit and layout of our podcast, where we have a beautiful habit of breaking down potential client scenarios so we can figure out the best way to support the self and others without offense. We have curated 2 scenarios with potential solutions and supportive stances and positions one can take to connect with the self or others. In scenario 1, the blended family, step-parents and step-siblings, and the scapegoat struggle. The situation: Jordan, 16, moves in with his mom and stepdad after his mother remarries. His stepdad's daughter, Sophie, 15, is constantly praised, while Jordan is criticized and blamed for family conflicts. His mom remains silent to avoid confrontation, making Jordan feel isolated. His grades drop, and he withdraws from the family.
Outlining the roles of this scenario: 1. Golden child, the favored biological child of the step-parent. 2. Scapegoat, the stepchild is blamed for family issues. 3. Peacemaker, the sibling trying to keep harmony. 4. Disengaged parent, the biological parent who avoids conflict. And 5. Authoritarian step-parent, enforces strict rules but shows favoritism.
Possible solutions in this scenario: 1. Parental advocacy. Jordan's mom must recognize the favoritism and set firm boundaries with her spouse. 2. Family therapy. Addressing favoritism and improving communication through professional guidance. Third step parent awareness. Encouraging the stepdad to acknowledge his biases and make an effort to connect with Jordan. Fourth, sibling bonding. Creating opportunities for Jordan and Sophie to relate outside of family tensions. 5. External support for Jordan. Seeking a mentor, counselor, or trusted family member for emotional validation.
Here are some key messages and takeaways. 1. Your worth isn't defined by how your stepfamily treats you. Find people who appreciate you for who you are. 2. You deserve to be treated with fairness and respect, even if your family doesn't always show it. 3. You are not responsible for their favoritism. Find people who value you. And 4. It's okay to build a life beyond this home. There is a world where you are appreciated.
In scenario 2, the traditional nuclear family and the hero burden. The situation is outlined as nuclear family, 2 parents, 2 kids. Mia, 18, has always been the responsible one. Since her dad lost his job and her mom started working extra hours, she takes care of her younger brother, Ethan, 10, while also consoling her father. Though praised for being strong, Mia feels exhausted and isolated, unable to enjoy a normal teenage life.
Outlining roles in this scenario. 1. The hero, the eldest child who takes on excessive responsibility. 2. Lost child, the overlooked younger sibling. 3. Stressed parent, struggling with financial or emotional burdens. And 4th, dependent. Parent relies emotionally on the hero.
Some possible solutions: parental awareness, helping Mia's parents recognize the burden they've placed on her, encouraging boundaries, empowering Mia to say no and prioritize her well-being, seeking external help, engaging family friends, mentors, or counselors to support her parents, redistributing responsibilities, assigning age-appropriate tasks to Ethan to lighten Mia's load, addressing Mia's self-care and independence, encouraging her to develop hobbies, friendships, and a life outside her family duties.
Some key messages for you. 1. You are allowed to have a life outside of taking care of others. It's okay to step back. 2. Being responsible doesn't mean carrying everything alone. It's okay to set boundaries. 3. You deserve rest and joy just as much as anyone else in your family. 4. Your worth is not tied to how much you do for others. You are important simply because you are. And 5. Let's find small ways to take something off your plate so you have space to breathe.
If you resonate with Jordan's or Mia's experiences, know that you're not alone. Family roles can be overwhelming, but with awareness, support, and small changes, balance is possible. Remember, you deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. This is a good segue into more fun with family dynamics with Stuck in the Middle, triangulation, grief, and the family group. Why we talk around each other instead of to each other, and what to do about it. We are going to unpack triangulation, a common but often misunderstood dynamic in emotionally charged families, especially in the context of grief, trauma, caregiving, or intergenerational stress. We'll break down how triangulation shows up, why it happens, how it perpetuates dysfunction, and what respectful communication alternatives look like.
Well, for one, what is triangulation, really? It is defined as a psychological and relational tactic where one person, person A, communicates with another, person C, through a third party, person B, instead of addressing the issue directly. For example, your mom vents to you about your sister instead of speaking to your sister directly. Now you feel responsible for soothing the tension between them. Triangulation is clinically rooted in family systems theory by Bowen. When emotions are high and direct confrontation feels threatening, we triangulate to diffuse, but it actually just distributes dysfunction.
The next cue in triangulation is why triangulation even happens. Here's a quick list: emotional avoidance, unprocessed grief or anger, intergenerational trauma, learned communication patterns, power imbalances or role confusion in family systems, and potentially because of the fear of conflict or rejection.
According to Statistics Canada 2019, 30% of Canadians report frequent family conflict during a caregiving crisis, e.g., illness, death. 67% of Canadian caregivers report feeling emotionally caught in the middle when supporting multiple family members. In grief-specific households, triangulation is more likely to occur in families where direct emotional expression is historically discouraged. That is from Statistics Canada 2021 on mental health trends.
Here's how to identify triangulation. 1. You're being asked to take sides. 2. Someone tells you things just between us to emotionally recruit you. 3. You feel responsible for fixing a conflict you didn't create. And 4. Communication feels indirect, passive-aggressive, or secretive. Number 5. You're the constant family therapist or emotional translator. And if you leave conversations feeling like a sponge for other people's issues, you might be in a triangle. Just some things to look out for. Some examples of this are grieving families. Dad complains to you about how mom is not handling grief right instead of talking to her, or caregiving roles. One sibling refuses to talk to another and makes you the scheduling messenger, or you can see it in divorced co-parents when your child hears how bad the other parent is through you instead of the parent directly.
We are also going to talk frankly about why triangulation feels safe, but really isn't. Triangulation avoids confrontation, but eventually erodes trust. It creates unhealthy coalitions and emotional enmeshment, compounding the communication and potential resolution. Also, it can unintentionally ostracize or villainize family members, which does not create cohesion, but rather the opposite. And over time, it leads to resentment, miscommunication, and epic burnout, where you can't build trust in a family by playing emotional telephone tag.
It is best to deal with triangulation respectfully but firmly. Some sample dialogue reframes to assist our listeners.
Go from this: I don't want to upset your brother. Can you just talk to him for me?
To this, I think this conversation belongs between the two of you. I care about both of you, but I don't want to get in the middle.
Go from this: she never listens to me.
To this, have you had a chance to tell her that directly? I think it would mean more coming from you.
Some tools that can help: use I statements to clarify boundaries, encourage direct communication, text, call, family meeting, normalize therapy or mediation when needed, and name the dynamic gently. I'm noticing I'm being asked to hold on to feelings that aren't mine. Can we talk about how to shift that?
There is a lot behind and beneath triangulation, like unspoken grief, shame, or fear of rejection, and an attempt to maintain a connection, even if it's indirect. Triangulation is usually a huge cry for closeness dressed up as a complaint. Additionally, triangulation thrives in silence. But clarity isn't cruelty to others, it's a kindness to yourself and your family. Grief already distorts reality. Let's not add more filters. If you feel stuck between family members, take a deep breath. Feel your feet, ground yourself, and ask, is this mine to carry? With the solid sentiment that it is not disconnection, it's discernment. There's a huge difference.
We have some myths and truths for you right before we provide you with some affirmations and mantras. Is it true or a myth? You decide. Grief can show up physically in your body. What do you think? Truth, or is it a myth?
That may have been an easy one for you, but it is the truth. Grief can feel like fatigue, tightness in your chest, brain fog, and gut problems. Your body remembers. It's like a built-in grief Wi-Fi, always connected, even when you don't consciously log in.
What about you have to move on to heal? What do we think? Is that the truth or a myth? I'll give you a sec to think about it. I wish I had Jeopardy music for the hold.
That's a myth served with a side of guilt for fun. You don't move on, you move with. Like getting a new pair of shoes and learning to walk with the blisters, it is uniquely yours. Grief doesn't disappear, it just changes outfits.
This exercise is meant to challenge the stigmas that float around about grief and healing. We have some affirmations for our listeners, healing from family roles. When reclaiming your identity, you could say, I am more than the role I was assigned. My worth is not tied to my performance, obedience, or image. And/or, I give myself permission to evolve beyond who I had to be for survival's sake.
For those grieving the past, repeated sayings of, it is okay to mourn what I never received, or grief is not weakness, it is the wisdom of my body processing truth, or I can hold both sadness and strength at the same time, could be helpful.
For the pattern breakers, it ends with me and it begins with me. I do not need to repeat what harmed me to belong. Small shifts create new legacies. And for self-compassionate people, I am allowed to take up emotional space. My needs are valid, even when they are inconvenient for others, and I am learning, and that is enough.
Affirmations for emotional regulation are as follows. I can surf the waves, I don't need to drown in them. A trigger is an invitation, not a verdict. And I can respond instead of react. And for the generational healers among us, I honor where I come from while choosing a new path forward. I am not here to carry what was never mine, and I plant seeds of safety and softness for myself and the next generation. For the mantras makers to whisper in the hard moments, I survived by adapting. I heal by unlearning. Pause, breathe. This is a new moment. Let it be messy. Let it be real. I choose connection over protection. And finally, but not limited to, I am becoming someone I feel safe and secure with. Grief Anatomy does not want you to be left empty-handed. Therefore, we are going to outline some accessible resources and support for you. 1. Family Dynamics and Relationship Repair, the Family Systems Institute. www.thefsi.com.au. They offer insights on family roles, patterns, and healing from dysfunctional family dynamics. 2. The Gottman Institute, www.gottman.com. They offer options and support for relationship and family healing with resources to help navigate conflict and communication within the family unit.
Some suggested reading depending on the age and family dynamics. 1. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, Lindsay C. Gibson. 2. It Didn't Start With You, Mark Wolynn, explores generational trauma and family roles. Some possible therapy resources. 1. Psychology Today Therapist Finder, www.psychologytoday.com. 2. BetterHelp Online Therapy, www.betterhelp.com. 3. Journaling Prompts for Family Healing. Reflect on how your assigned role shaped your identity. 4. Write a letter, even if you don't send it, to a family member expressing your feelings with a deep understanding of how it impacted you being put in this role.
Some possible mindfulness and meditation apps. 1. Headspace, guided meditations to process emotions. And 2. Calm, helps manage anxiety and stress related to family grief. Additionally, the passages from the book 10 Days Happier by Dominique Bertolucci. Randomly sourced, there is a passage on page 59 called Treat Yourself with Respect, and it says, constantly criticizing yourself or using a harsh tone is not the way to get the best out of yourself. It continues with, listen to your inner dialogue as my podcast guest did today, and make the commitment today to only ever speak to yourself with the utmost kindness, patience, and love. Your self-esteem is one of your most precious possessions. Treat yours with the respect it deserves. The repeatable mantra is that your self-esteem is a valuable resource. Reframing the negative rhetoric, acknowledging that triggering may occur, but ultimately ensuring you encourage, nurture, protect, and support yourself. And folks, that's where we'll leave it today. Somewhere between the mess, the meaning, and the moments we don't quite have words for, but we showed up for it anyways. As you have probably been told, grief isn't linear, family isn't simple, and none of us are getting through this without a few dents or scars. But if today reminded you that you're not alone in the chaos, or you now have some tool to support yourself or someone else going through something, then we did something right. I'm Andy. Walking this road, hand in hand with you, is a privileged experience for me, and I can recognize that at times it is awkward, definitely honest, raw, unfiltered, and occasionally humorous. Thank you for being here and showing up for yourself, albeit by sharing or listening. I cannot stress this enough. If this episode resonated with you, send it to someone who might need it, and save and re-listen whenever you need to. You don't know what others are going through in their grief journey. So if no one comes to mind, just sit with it yourself or remember this episode for later when support is needed by another struggling in their family dynamics. Until next time, friends, be gentle with yourself and the other people, even when they drive you nuts. And be gentle with yourself, especially then. See you soon and take good care of yourself. And don't forget to hydrate, damn it.